My name is Rachel Brown. I'm a senior Penn State student. I'm majoring in public relations and minoring in Spanish, international studies, and political science. I'm from Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. My mom is from Calcutta, India, and my dad's white.
I guess my first question is, how do you identify? That's what we'll start off with.
If I ever have a choice, I always identify as mixed race. Now the census has finally added that little category. But yeah, when they tell me, or I put other, I never put one like Indian or white. I always identify as both.
And how do you feel your identity has played a role in I guess you as a person and how you identify? Do you relate closely to it or not as much?
Two separate answers. The first one would be, it's played a lot into the way that I saw myself when I was growing up, because I grew up in a town that had about, without the university students, 2,000 people. The high school that I went to was 99% white, and so even if I did want to ignore one side of my heritage or one side of my culture, it was pretty much impossible to do so, because people identified me as the brown girl or the Indian girl or whatever. So even though I'm mixed race, it didn't really matter where I grew up because the brown stands out more. And so that's what it was. Never really in a rude way. People just identified me that way, so I started to identify myself that way. So I was definitely very aware of the fact that I was mixed race. And then, but it's kind of paradoxical in a way, because even though I was mixed race, like I said, I grew up with a bunch of white people, and so I have that cultural tendency to sort of gravitate towards spending time with other white people because those are the people that I saw. So actually, when I first came to Penn State, it was a much more diverse place than I had been exposed to in my hometown. And so I definitely feel as though now I don't think about my identity or my race as much, just because I feel like I'm surrounded by a little bit more diversity than I grew up with. But in my 4 years of being at Penn State, as I'm about to graduate, I'm realizing how not a diverse school this is compared to some of the other places that I've seen.
And how do you feel about the diversity here?
I guess I've just become more aware of it. I initially thought that it was very diverse because of the environment that I was coming from. But just from taking different courses, even Social 119, I took an ethnic and race relations course in political science. I've just become a little bit more aware of those types of things because I've been studying them. And now, like I said, as I'm about to graduate, I'm looking back and I think that central Pennsylvania is definitely not one of the most diverse places, nor is it one of the most accepting places of diversity. I feel like at Penn State there's a lot of I still think there's a lot of segregation between all different kinds of groups. And not necessarily on purpose, but just for the fact that you want to spend time with people who are like-minded and who understand where you come from. And I think a lot of the people, we all kind of come to this place, but then we come from areas where we haven't practiced how to interact with people who are different from us, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's more so because Penn State is a predominantly white institution, or do you just think we lack diversity in terms of, race and thought, or just race is what sticks out more?
But I just don't think that, whether it's race or thought, I think it's more the thought process that we don't have to. It's not that we lack a ton of diversity, I think we just lack being able to mingle with one another. So it's not as present to everybody because we're all so separated.
What do you think of diversity when you think of the word diversity? Because that's always different for everyone.
It's subjective.
Yes, yeah. Very subjective. And do you think Penn State is diverse? Would it be a truthful statement?
Yeah, I think Penn State wants to be diverse. I think they want to be able to say that about themselves, and so they try to pull from different areas to say, look, we have diversity. But I think, yes, in comparison to a lot of universities and compared to urban areas in general, no, I don't think that we are very diverse. And I can't say, even though I am half Indian and even though I'm brown, I guess, I don't think that I can speak to the amount of isolation that I know other people have felt when coming here because of my particular circumstance, having grown up in a white area and then coming here. I feel like I get counted as white here because people would rather identify me that way than relate to me in another way, I guess. I think that's something easier for people to do in their brains is to be like, okay, well, she's white, or she's something like that, or I've been called Italian, I've been called Mexican or Hispanic. I get Hispanic all the time. So those are the things that people go towards before like really addressing my race. But in general, no, I guess.
You talked about how like people have addressed, like I guess misinterpreted your racial background and your ethnic background.
Yeah.
What do you like feel internally when people do that?
I feel like now the reason I even picked up Spanish was just so I could trick everybody who thought I was Hispanic. But, I don't actually, this could be a bad answer, but I don't really feel too terrible when somebody, I guess, misidentifies me because then that opens the floor for a conversation. At least somebody is like trying to address that. Some people don't like their race to be addressed and like, that's fine too. I mean, I think it's everybody's personal preference, but I think I like when people ask me because then at least I can like talk about it, and I think that creates some level of connection and understanding, as long as it's done in like a respectful manner, which usually it is. I just think, some people get offended when somebody walks up and goes, well, what are you? Or where are you from? And people, I've watched tons of videos, I've read tons of articles where some people are really just like, well, why does it matter? Or you don't need to ask that question. But I always see that as an opportunity to sort of promote growth and understanding. So.
Has there ever been an instance, situation where you felt like you questioned being here, or you questioned the values and morals of this university?
I have. Yeah, in general, and I don't know if it's directly related to race or anything like that, but more just,
I guess, in terms of like marginalized
culture
groups.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of different things that have contributed to me feeling that way, because I definitely, like, I said before, as a senior, and I'm about to be a graduate of Penn State in like 2 weeks or a week or something. I think, I look back and I'm just like, I don't know if this was the right place for me. There are some days where I guess I don't feel like there's a sense of inclusiveness in this university because, one, we have a very dominant Greek life culture, which I never fit into. And I know it's not like 50% of the student body. It's like
it's about 12.
It's 12. It's not that big. It doesn't. I mean, to me, it seems bigger. Like I feel like I'm constantly meeting like frat guys and sorority girls, and those are terrible stereotypes to like put on anybody because I've met great people from all different types of groups. But there's something about, I feel like I get questioned a lot, like because I'm not into all the football games, and I don't always go to tailgating, and I don't like to go out to the bars every single night or even every single weekend. Those kinds of things that people associate with our university and associate with being a Penn Stater and going here and having that connection, like, it just wasn't something that I wanted to partake in. And so in that sense, and I know that there's so many different facets of our culture at Penn State, but there's just something about, like, all of the traditions that go with Penn State that I just had no desire to partake in. And so I have found, like, my place and my groups through just, like, random encounters with people. And I think one thing that's great about the university is that there's so many people here. You got 45,000 people. It's almost impossible not to find somebody or a small group of people, even if it's small, a niche, I guess, that you can fit into. When I went to Brown University, like, my friend's whole dorm hallway, I don't know if this was a coincidence or not, but it was more diverse, and I noticed it as soon as I walked in, and I felt people like come towards me, and they were so friendly, and they were, you know, when I was about to leave 2 days later, they were like, you should apply here, you should transfer, you should stay, like, we want to hang out with you. And so I don't know if anybody would ever have said something like that to me right off the bat here if I had visited for 2 days. And so, like, my whole freshman year, I was just like, should I transfer somewhere new? But what I learned is that because this is such a big place, like, all of the people that I've met have created the culture that I live in within Penn State. And so, you know, I don't get criticized by those people for not wearing blue and white or not bleeding blue and white or going out to the bars every night or whatever it is that makes it Penn State. So I don't really have any regrets about attending here, but I think that I'm most thankful for the people that I met. Rather, there's so much criteria to be a Penn Stater, and like I just don't feel like I'm too lazy or too busy or too preoccupied to be meeting all of those standards that make somebody a Penn Stater. And I get like, these are more of the times that I feel marginalized is like by the culture itself, not by particular groups of people or races or anything like that. It's just like being a Penn Stater or not being a Penn Stater. You don't have school pride. You're not wearing blue and white. Like, who cares?
It's kind of
but
funny.
You know, I don't know. I think there is really too much criteria. I think as a freshman, I really tried to embrace all of those things because you want to make friends and you want to experience things. And I had all of those experiences, and I was like, cool. I can check. I went to Joe Pa's last game. I, ate my creamery ice cream. I climbed Mount Nittany. And then I was just like, okay, that doesn't make me me. That doesn't make me a Penn Stater. Like, those are just experiences I had. And so I just never chose to repeat them.
If I was to say to you, we are Penn State, how would you define that we, and what does that mean to you?
We. I don't know. I think I really do, and this is sad for me to call out, and you can use this or not. I really do immediately think of a white girl or a white guy saying we are Penn State. Like, standing there saying we are Penn State. Like, I don't see diversity in my head if I had to picture a group of people. But that ties in with the types of people that I see adhere to that dominant culture that I consider to be the culture of Penn State. I don't know if that's racist or not for me to say, but that's like the way that I see it. Because I'm thinking of my group of friends and us saying we are Penn State, and people would just laugh looking at, like, I feel like people would just be like, what? Like, no, you're not, this can't be Penn State. There's something much more standard that would be a great kind of cover photo for a we rather than.
Do you feel like groups that aren't part of the dominant culture, are they really able to be a part of the Penn State culture?
No, I don't think so.
Why do you think that?
I think that once people find out that you might not be as enthusiastic about certain things, they sort of write you off in that sense, and just in the Penn State sense. They can get along with you on like a person-to-person sense, but on a Penn Stater to Penn Stater thing, I think, I could go to a football game, or my friends and I could go to a football game or whatever, but we would just stand out in general from not like being drunk out of our minds and like freaking out over everything. I think that just makes you stand out from the dominant culture, because you're just not as enthusiastic or other things interest you. And so if they're not within this like straight line of things you're supposed to do to be a true Nittany Lion, which I can.
When you're talking about how, like, when you, I guess, let people know, I'm Indian, do you ever feel like you've been tokenized? You become, like, the token.
Oh, like the token brown girl?
Yeah.
I was the token brown girl pretty much my whole entire life, and when I grew up in Slippery Rock. So that's not, it's very strange when you grow up in a culture like that, and you're a child from that point forward. You have your adolescence in that culture. I have become, not as much anymore, but as I was growing up, I became I overlooked and sort of accepted like racist comments because people would say things to me as jokes, and I didn't have enough information as a kid or even as a teenager to know that some of the things that they were saying should be taken offensively. So things like, I don't know, they would just like make fun of my brown skin, or say like when I was eating chocolate or something and something fell off, like, oh, your skin's peeling off, or like something, like things like people said things like that. My friend who is Korean, he'd wear a yellow shirt and they'd be like, Dan, why aren't you wearing a shirt today? Like, because the yellow blended, right? So those were comments that I heard on a very, very regular basis. Years. But I would say, you know, it's hard for me to necessarily recognize when I'm being tokenized, if that makes sense, because if I had called out all of the people who have said things to me throughout my lifetime and been aware of that as a child, God, I had like a penny for everyone, I'd be rich, right? So now when people do, I don't know why I'm like, if I am being tokenized, because it's something that I've become very immune to. I grew to be immune to that. And so I can't say, I think that if I had known more about maybe what those comments meant and where they were coming from, and I guess I would be more aware when people were trying to tokenize me now. But I actually can't say that I've ever felt that way, because it's just a defense mechanism that developed when I was really young, to not take those comments so seriously or take questions so seriously. So it's kind of a different case, I think, for me than most people.
Have you ever really heard anything or seen anything that just kind of made you like, wow, like just, I guess, a blatant display of ignorance, which always happens.
You see that, I see it all the time, that I probably haven't even started collecting. I don't waste my brain space keeping all the ignorant things that I've ever seen or heard, remembering things. Actually, people being discriminatory towards like people's sexual orientation more than I
talk about that.
So that's actually something that I feel like I can speak a lot more to. But with regards to sexual orientation, I have a lot of friends that are gay and lesbian, or I know some trans people, and so I think that's where I've seen more discrimination, because I have actually a lot of lesbian friends, and a couple of them, like one of them always gets misgendered, like she always gets called a he, and I personally, like she lived on my floor freshman year, that's how I got to know her, and she's like come to be one of my closest friends here at Penn State, and that's what I mean by when I think about somebody taking a picture of my group of friends and saying like we are, I feel like people will be like, that can't be our representation, it's not allowed. But she'll go out and go grab a piece of pizza, and somebody will like, first they'll misgender her, and then they'll just like they'll call her a faggot, and they'll just like be blatantly rude, like just on normal days, like people drive by in a car, people walk by, people are saying it to somebody else when they're in a group, and I hear that word way too often here. Like way, way, way too often. And I hear people use gay as an adjective, and that's a type of discrimination that like I for some reason I'm exposed to a lot, and I see a lot just because of the people I'm around. It's not usually directed at me, it's directed at other people, directed at strangers, but that's something that I've like stood up for and like called people out on it. Because like, what's the purpose of using the word gay as meaning stupid? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And actually, I'll tell you something quite interesting, and this is like anonymous, but still interesting. I was a student ambassador like for the Ad Council, which is a nonprofit ad agency that does like all of the public service announcements you've ever seen, like Smokey the Bear and whatnot. And I was putting up posters, and they did a campaign about bullying, and especially not using the words like retarded, gay, faggot, and they had like they had these posters that we printed out that basically had like the definition of what those words actually meant and why you shouldn't use it. And so I was like stapling them up, and like one of them was in like Willard, and I walked by like a few days later, and on the poster that was saying, like, not to say gay, somebody had written, "This is so gay." And I was like, there are people that go to our school that are that blatantly, think it's okay. Just, like, think it's okay to be discriminatory in any way. And you could tell them something, you could put up a poster, you could sit them down and talk to them, and they will still just, like, not understand. And I think there are way too many people that are like that, and way too many people that I've seen do that. And maybe not as much with regards to race, and that just happens to be the experience that I've had. I know that it happens, but I just don't see it as much. But when it comes to just something as simple as somebody's sexual orientation, and one, you don't even know. Nobody walks around with a sign around their neck either, so, like, why would you go around screaming that kind of stuff anyway? Makes no sense to me.
Because I had a conversation with some friends here and realized that they really don't know what rape is, and their sense of rape culture was just, it blew my mind. Like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So I guess just talking about that and what it's like to even be a woman, because I feel women on this campus are significantly marginalized. So.
Significantly marginalized.
Yeah, so
and half of them marginalize themselves because they adhere to they adhere to the dominant culture and to the patriarchy that is Penn State and most of the institutions in this one. I identify as a feminist, and I can say that very clearly. Most girls here don't even know what feminism is. I've had this conversation a zillion times. It's about equality between sexes, the end. In general, I think there are too many women on this campus that just, they don't respect themselves. Two, they don't even understand the standard that they should hold for themselves. And so I think any sort of class or play or musical or reading or person that can just get information out there to 51% or 50% of the people on this campus, which all happen to be women, is like one of the greatest things that can happen. Because yes, rape culture here, I don't know what your experience has been in talking to the people that you've talked to. Our rape culture here is absolutely ridiculous. It's awful and it's terrible. And I know people who have been raped who don't know that they've been raped. I know people who have been sexually assaulted, and people just awful, beat up, and got, like, there's just not enough being done, I don't think, on this campus to educate our women in general. And so, I don't know, this is so long, but, like, that's why I got involved in vagina monologues, and that's why I try to take classes where I feel like I'm being educated. So, like, when I'm in just a normal conversation with a person, these are things that I have knowledge about and that we can talk about. And I just think that's something that should be encouraged in every campus. And if for just a better Penn State in general, I think I would want to see more diversity. I want to know if our percentage of international students is so high, then, like, why did I not know that until somebody just, like, a teacher rolled off a statistic? Like, I feel like there needs to be something that's more celebratory of that diversity of our student body, that's not focused so heavily on Penn State pride and Penn State dominant culture, because I do see that everything is just, like, is all about Penn State. It's all about the logo. It's all about the Nittany line. It's all about the football. It's all about our research. But I want to see just the people, like, all of them, and not just ones that you think are perfect to be on a poster, but the ones that, like, maybe get forgotten, or the groups that are so small because they can't get their voice out there. There needs to be more of sort of a meshing of all of the different facets that make up our university. I think we look through it and it's like this small of a sort of perspective, and I just want to see the whole thing.
If you could give one piece of advice to your freshman self, what would it be?
I would have gotten more involved, actually, but not in, like, the way that people would probably assume I would. Like, I wouldn't have done Thon, but I would have gotten more, because I didn't actually do Thon my whole 4 years. I went to it my freshman year. I loved it, and I think that what they do is absolutely wonderful. Like, I probably would have tried to get involved with student government. I think that more and more every day I feel like I don't have a voice, not only on this campus, but like in our country in general. And so I think it's important for me to realize and for me to have realized that getting involved is a way to actually make changes. I just think being as involved as you can is something that all freshmen should try to do, and not in the most stereotypical way or in the way that a school tells you to be involved, but with things that you're passionate about. I'm Rachel. I'm half Indian. I'm half white. I'm a feminist. I'm an ally, and I am Penn State.